very important session that I'm looking forward to seeing more of. I've worked on over 400 projects as a filmmaker, as an editor, as a producer, and a director. Some of them have won awards, and the film that I'm going to show you today, I've had absolutely nothing to do with. But it's one of the most important things that I've been a part of, especially in the last couple of years. And here's a statement that some of you might argue with, and that is that every company that's watching this, every person that's watching this is already a media company. Every nonprofit, every startup, the only question is whether you're acting like one. I don't mean that as marketing advice. I mean that mechanically. Whether or not you ever produced a single frame, people are forming their understanding of your work through what they can see through motion pictures. The title of this session, From Story to Influence, is the title that we've agreed to call this. But the question underneath it is a lot harsher. What happens to a story when nobody sees it? Mostly, nothing happens. Not because people don't care, it's because they never got a chance to care. We treat film as the last line in a budget, usually. Then the budget gets tight, and then that line disappears, and nobody notices what was lost because you can't miss a moment that was never recorded. So if your organization can't tell its story in motion pictures, it isn't becoming less popular, it's becoming invisible. Here's what I learned, where I first learned that. When I first started my career here in Los Angeles, I was working at Survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation. It was a nonprofit organization started by Steven Spielberg when he decided to document over 52,000 testimonies of Holocaust survivors. And I started out entering this industry listening to survivors of genocide, and they were describing what they had lived through. I was very young at the time, while I was actually first in college, and I wasn't prepared for what I was going to end up doing for the next several years of my career. And what I learned from that experience was that recording a testimony, visual history of someone, isn't something that creates content. It prevents a human experience from being erased. And today it's even more important when you think about how many years ago these survivors were born. Most of the survivors that are still alive today are probably were children, but once they're gone, the only thing that will remain is that visual history testimonial that was recorded while they were still here. And everything that I've done since then, has been a kind of a double life between the world of entertainment and social impact cinema. But it's definitely something that experience has really made it my passion to focus on this incredible gift of motion picture storytelling to do so much more than just entertain the masses. And so, I have created many films that have made an impact in one way or another. Films about homelessness, about veterans, about human trafficking, women who have been rebuilding their lives after domestic violence. And in every one of the rooms that these films have been screened, the same things happen. People walk away, they might have already known the statistics of these horrible things that are happening in the world, but when they see a face, when the lights go down and they get to sit there for 7 minutes, this is something that they've left change after they've experienced the story in a motion picture. And they may have already studied and known some of the stats that have been out there with some of these problems, but you can't feel a spreadsheet, but you can feel a face. You can feel the emotion that a person has when they're telling their story. So that brings me to a phone call that I had about a year and a half ago It was my very close friend and great supporter of the WITI community, Bruce Bryan, who you'll meet shortly, if not on this call, on this coming Saturday. And he called and he said, Noah, you have to see this film. Called me on video chat on a WhatsApp call. And I'm here on the West Coast and Bruce is in New York. It was after midnight New York time, but he wanted me to stay on this video call while I watched this short film. And it's called The Injustice of Justice. And it was actually an animation that was animated by an Emmy-nominated artist, Molly Crabapple, and her team at Sharp as Knives Productions. And it was written and narrated by a man named Keith LaMar from a cell in the Ohio State Penitentiary, where he is on death row and was able to record his voice in order to provide the narration. Now, Keith has been in prison since he was 19 years old, almost all of it in isolation, in solitary confinement. He has maintained from the beginning and every day since that he is innocent. The state of Ohio intends to execute Keith on January 13th, 2027. And in 1 week from today, just about, it's 5 months away. And it's going to be one of the first executions in the state of Ohio since 2018, I believe. So hold on to that date because I'm going to be coming back to that. What I can tell you is that that day when I saw the film, Bruce was asking me, like, what can we do? And it was just released at the time. I think it had been released on Instagram for about a week. And after watching this 7-minute film that was so extraordinary, I thought to myself, this needs to be somewhere. Why is this on Instagram? This needs to be in every movie theater in the world. Like, how is anything going to happen if it's going to get lost, if it's just remaining on the internet and on Instagram? So what I'm going to do first is play this short film. And I want everyone to watch what this animation is doing. There's no footage in any of this. It's only illustrations. That was the only way that they were able to illustrate through a motion picture Keith's story in a place where no camera was ever allowed to go. So stand by as I cue up The Injustice of Justice.
My name is Keith LaMar. I'm a poet, author, and musician. For the past 31 years, I've been in solitary confinement, buried under the never-ending agony of sensory deprivation. On January the 13th, 2027, the state of Ohio intends to kill me. I'm innocent. Thousands of people around the country and the world have rallied around my cause, joining me in my demand for justice. Here's my story. When I was 19 years old and selling drugs, a group of would-be robbers in search of money forced their way into my apartment. A shootout ensued, and regrettably I took someone's life and was myself shot twice in the legs. Facing a long prison sentence and on the advice of counsel, I pled guilty to murder and was sentenced to serve 18 years to life. Determined to redeem myself and make good on my potential, I completed my GED, enrolled in college, and became a voracious reader in an attempt to repair myself to society. I was in the 4th year of my sentence when, in 1993, a riot erupted inside the prison. Apparently, a group of Muslim prisoners on religious grounds refused to submit to mandatory tuberculosis testing and were given an ultimatum: take the test or else. Amid rumors of a forced inoculation, the Muslims took over the prison in protest. releasing some 400 prisoners from their cells and setting into motion an 11-day standoff that would ultimately claim the lives of 1 guard and 9 prisoners. I was on the recreation yard when it all began. A guard came running out of the building with blood streaming down his face, followed by a masked prisoner who was carrying a weapon and yelling, "We taking over!" Against my better judgment, I went inside to check on my personal belongings. A fatal mistake. It was complete chaos. When I made it to my assigned location, I discovered that it was being used as a holding area for hostages, both guards and prisoners. I was thereafter approached by a masked prisoner who gave me the option to either participate or leave. I chose to leave. Hundreds of us gathered on the yard, waiting as the National Guard and Highway Patrol took up watch outside the perimeter fence. Later, when dead bodies were dumped into the yard, they stood by and did nothing. It was as if I was trapped inside a nightmare. Around 2 a.m. the following morning, we were rounded up and herded into the gymnasium, where we were stripped naked and then violently forced in random groups of 10 into cells meant for 1 person. Stressed and stretched to the limit, a fight broke out over food. Tragically, I stood back and watched as a man named Dennis Weaver was held down by 3 prisoners and choked to death. It was a cowardly thing to do, and I can now see and admit that, but at the time, I was worried about my own life. When I was later questioned by authorities, I claimed to have been asleep. It was my way of telling them that I didn't want to be involved. But it was too late. Because I had gone into the hostage area without wearing a mask, my name would be mentioned among a vast array of potential suspects. Even though the state concedes that I was never affiliated with any of the gangs said to have presided over the riot, the fact that I was already serving time for murder would play a big part in their decision to indict me. Ultimately, I was charged with 9 counts of aggravated murder. I couldn't believe it. Mind you, it was never expected that I would actually demand a trial. He copped out once, he'll cop out again, was the prevailing belief. In fact, no sooner than I was indicted, I was offered a deal. Plead guilty and we'll run the time concurrent with the time you're already serving. In other words, I would have gotten off easier had I actually killed someone. But why me? Why was I singled out for this undeserved retribution? It's a good question, one that I've spent the better part of 3 decades trying to explain. Here's what I can tell you. When the riot came to an end, overzealous officials rushed into the prison without first securing the massive crime scene, rendering inadmissible some 22,000 pieces of evidence. So there was absolutely no evidence to link anyone to crimes. This meant the state had to rely solely on the uncorroborated testimony of jailhouse informants, the most unreliable witnesses of all. What to do? Well, the first thing the state did was enlist the help and expertise of the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office. This was not a random selection. Hamilton County has the dubious distinction of convicting and executing more than half of all death row prisoners in the United States. And how have they been so successful? The answer is simple and deadly. Through the impaneling of all-white juries, the use of paid jailhouse informants, and the intentional withholding of exculpatory evidence. I have now in my possession the statement of an actual perpetrator who admitted to murdering someone for whom I was sentenced to death. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. They withheld so much more. It's over 3 decades later now, and I'm still in solitary confinement, being tortured because I refused to plead guilty to something I didn't do. I'm innocent. Look, we kid ourselves when we speak of justice. Until we have a process that holds everyone equally accountable for their actions, this system will remain what it has always been, a punishment system. And as we all know, those who don't have the capital get the punishment.
So when I saw this film, I was completely blown away. And that was Keith's actual voice, and he recorded that while he was in solitary confinement. It's in fact, Keith has been an author of many books and songs that he's been able to do through a deal that was made while he was in solitary confinement because of the harsh penalty for the number of years that he's been in there. But the next morning, and we're talking Los Angeles morning, around 6 a.m., Bruce calls me and he has Keith on the line. And we had discussed the night before, like, wow, we should really, we really need to do something to get this film out. And I had no idea that he was going to call me, but he conference called with Keith on the phone from death row in solitary confinement. And I had a feeling, that when I'm like, no idea that as I was talking to Bruce, that within like 6 hours later, that I would be on the phone with Keith himself. And so I wasn't sure, he said, Noah, you said you had some ideas on what we could do. And at the moment it came to me because in a few weeks from that call, I had a documentary film, premiering at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood. And it was the first thing that I could think of an idea that maybe we could talk to the festival director and tell him about what's going on and the urgency that this film really needs to be seen to influential people in an influential environment, and maybe we could discuss that and submit it. Now there was a problem because the festival was only in a couple of weeks and they had closed the submissions. So I wrote an email and I explained to the festival director who Keith was and asked them to look into it. And thankfully and fortunately, the great festival director Peter Green said yes. That's a great idea. We can include it in our program. So I didn't anticipate that they would say yes, but we took a shot and we found a way for Keith to join the premiere actually by phone on speakerphone from his cell. Now, this is where I want to really shift the conversation because in that moment of celebration that they agreed to show this film at a Hollywood Film Festival at one of the most famous theaters in the world, it occurred to me that we can't just let this moment pass. And, I can't just show up after my screening as a guest at this premiere, this world premiere of this incredible film. So I thought to myself, because Bruce and Keith's team, Amy, and some of the supporters of Keith's movement were all flew out to Los Angeles, and the screening was on a Sunday. And I thought to myself, I have to bring this with me to immortalize this moment. And it was a small decision, to bring a consumer camera to document what I believed was history. The first time that a death row inmate has a premiere at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood or any film festival. Not only that, but that would give a Q&A to the audience from solitary confinement and even an interview on the red carpet over the phone, something that I'm sure many people in Keith's same shoes would not have had that opportunity to do. So it felt like a small decision to bring this to a screening. So that's the one smart thing that I did in this entire story. I knew that whatever happened in the theater would happen exactly one time and in front of, a theater full of people that are at the film festival, filmmakers, residents of Hollywood and Los Angeles. And afterwards, it would be over. And people may have remembered it, but if it wasn't for bringing this right here, it would have all ended once the lights came back on. So here's what happened. um, we ended up taking that footage and created a little press kit and a press release that I'm going to share right now.
Well, I'm in Hollywood at the Golden State Film Festival here to showcase my brother Keith LaMar, Justice of Injustice, his animated 7-minute short film, which I think is profound and speaks to the criminal system of injustice.
Keith LaMar is incarcerated on death row in solitary confinement. He's been in solitary confinement since 1993, so 32 years. For the first time probably ever in film history, somebody from death row introduced their film in a Hollywood film festival, and what was so special is that Keith was able to call us from his cell and engage with the audience.
So this is not a story that has a beginning, a middle, and the end. In fact, it's ongoing.
Advocacy for our friend Keith LaMar. This is his book called Condemned. He's a wonderful man who was wrongfully convicted of murder and sentenced to death in the Ohio State Penitentiary. So we made this film to advocate for his release.
And one thing that really sets Keith apart from other people who are wrongfully convicted is that he really insists on inserting his voice into the narrative and actually to change that narrative.
I'm hoping that the public, get behind this cause and help me regain my freedom. I'm hoping to educate people about the criminal justice system. I'm hoping to bring people into the awareness that poor marginalized people are being unfairly, in a lot of ways, corruptly tortured in these places. Just to bring people to pull the curtain back and allow people to understand how the system truly works.
My hope is that this film makes it into the hands of Scott Budnick and makes it into the hands of Kim Kardashian, in hopes that the influence in Hollywood, influence in LA can grab a hold of this story and begin to speak out and petition the state of Ohio to release Keith LaMar.
It's heartbreaking, right, that the justice system is not built the same way for everyone. So I wish that we can do something about, again, just making it just for everyone.
This has happened to far too many young black and brown men across America, wrongfully convicted in a system that has always been unfair. Poverty is violence, and those that come up in marginalized community, it's so easy to convict.
And so I'm here not speaking just for myself, but for all of those voiceless people who don't have the platform. And so I'm hoping that this little 7-minute film can bring into awareness a more pernicious type of system and punishment that is prevalent in this country that we live in.
Keith is one of many. Keith's story is not an anomaly. Our humanity is inextricably intertwined to that of his and countless other people on death row. All of us want the best for each other.
Grand prize for the best animated short goes to...
Okay, so what I want to just interject here was that the film was screened on a Sunday. The rest of the festival took place for the rest of the week. And then they had their award ceremony at the end of the film festival. And we didn't think that we were going to win. I mean, we weren't sure. There were a lot of great films at this festival. There were hundreds of filmmakers that came to this film festival award ceremony in downtown LA at this fancy hotel overlooking the city. And if there was a chance that we won any award, whether it would be animation, documentary, social justice, whatever it was, that we would have Keith prepare a short video, 30-second video that he's allowed to create on the iPad that he gave him, that they gave him in solitary. Just a thank you, at the very least, just to give to the film festival director for allowing us to be a part of this film festival, given the circumstances, as well as the late deadline that we were able to get in and immortalize the moment at the Chinese Theater. Well, At the time, just in case, that name was mentioned, I loaded up and Bruce and Amy, they had to go back to New York by now, but I was there and I loaded up Keith's video on my laptop just in case, so that if there was someone there to represent in front of all of these filmmakers with big followings, that Keith would have a voice. And so here's what happened.
And the grand prize for the best animated short goes to The Injustice of Justice.
I'd like everyone to take out their phones right now to film this, because this film, The Injustice of Justice, is about Keith LaMar, who's been wrongfully accused of many crimes that he was accused of while in prison, and he's sentenced to death in the next 2 years. So I'm going to play this 20-second clip from Keith LaMar from solitary confinement, who filmed this for us today for you guys to see.
Obviously, I'm deeply grateful to Peter Green for providing the platform to share out my story and to reaffirm the fact that I am a voice in this world. It means everything to have won this award, to have received the recognition of that my story resonates with a broader cross-section of society, and I'm really, really thankful to each and every one of you for engaging with my struggle. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks so much.
So it's justice for Keith LaMar. Woo! Give it all go through and go check it out. It's a 7-minute short film, and I'm sure the filmmakers will be real proud of this. It's spread the word. Thank you so much.
Pretty incredible film.
criminal justice system to perform legalized lynchings and take this as a sign of progress. We confuse form with substance.
Okay, let's.
When I embarked on this
The drowned and the saved.
So this was such a wonderful thing that happened after the winning of this festival, the grand prize of the festival in front of all those filmmakers, because it allowed us to take this motion picture capturing of history and put it together in a press release and send it to Amy Goodman so that she has something to show on her show to give context to what we're doing. Had we not had this with us, this would have never happened. And it was an email and a click that made that all happen. And I'll put together a link to the full interview that Amy does with Keith from solitary confinement when they ran the story live. And it didn't happen because we're publicists, okay? It didn't happen because we're good at press. It happened just because we recognize the momentum and the power of motion picture capturing to be able to reach the masses. And plenty of people and press releases that you send, words to, you'll never hear back from. But in this case, we were able to get it to Amy Goodman, and she was able to cover this story. And it has since allowed for more people to learn about Keith's story, and be able to put pictures to what he was encountering, and think about all the people that don't have that privilege of being able to communicate their story, who may be innocent. There have been several that have actually been executed and found that they were innocent after it was too late. So, it's a press release, tells tells a newsroom, what happened, but to be able to create motion pictures proves that it's something that that they can put out there, and justify. So, the whole point that I'm trying to make here is, you heard also what Bruce had said on the red carpet. We wanted the influence of Hollywood to recognize Keith's story. And this past May, he shouted out my former boss, Scott Budnick, who is the founder of the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, who's been doing probably some of the most criminal justice or social justice reform in America. And he also shouted out a very famous celebrity, Kim Kardashian. And 15 months later, after Bruce brought that into existence, we learned that Kim Kardashian actually had done this. Kim Kardashian had actually created this post about Keith. Second. Here it is.
Let's not give it all away for Saturday, Noah. We'll have a lot more, but this is amazing. How many followers did
She's got 500 million followers, and it just goes to show you that this little bit of effort that didn't take much of much of a production team or a crew can lead to this kind of momentum, all because of having the foresight to capture these moments and to really create history by documenting it in such a way that it could be shared. So I know that Bruce can speak more about Keith and the work that he's doing. It's my understanding that he's going out there to Ohio to really come up with more advocacy to actually meet Keith as we're getting closer and closer to his execution date. But and we can talk more about Bruce's story as well. He was wrongfully convicted and spent decades in a New York State maximum prison. I'm truly grateful that he showed me this film and that we were able to get it out there. But everything that I described, the email to the festival director, the festival itself, and Keith's legal team, by his campaign, I documented this event. That's all I did. I can't take any of the credit for the film, can't take any of the credit for all the team behind Keith. But that's where I feel everyone should recognize, if they are a filmmaker or if they realize the importance of sharing story that needs to be told to the world, that you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility as a filmmaker to capture those moments and share them, because it will travel. And there's responsibility doesn't mean pointing a camera at every vulnerable person that you meet. It means noticing when something important is about to go unseen, asking permission, actually asking in a way that leaves room for people to think about it, and giving people their own voice instead of just speaking over them. So Keith wrote his own film, and that's the reason why this works. And I keep coming back to me and how little I did. I wrote an email and I brought a camera to a film premiere. And the email got the film into a room. that it could not have gotten otherwise. And the camera let the room become larger than the people that were sitting in it. And it went beyond, to Democracy Now! And all the way to Kim Kardashian to be able to post that. Right now, I'm coming back to that date, January 13th. Keith LaMar is in a cell in Ohio, and the state of Ohio is still planning to execute him on January 13th, 2027, 5 months from 1 week from today. And that is something that is a serious reality that we as a society need to recognize. And this is for a crime that he did not commit. And that's, only 5 months away, guys. And what more can we do? What are the little things that we can do to help raise this awareness? A film alone can't fix it. It can't replace the lawyers and the organizers and the journalists or the governor. But everything with a chance of changing that date will be done by people doing the unglamorous work, for a very long time. But here's what a film can do. It can make it harder for the world to say we didn't know. And I think that that's the point of all of this, is that when you create something in a motion picture, it immortalizes it forever. So when we leave this session today, don't ask your team, what's our story? Everybody asks that question, and it produces a slogan, right? Ask what is happening that people need to see, and then make sure that somebody is there to document it and bring a camera, because that alone could really change the course of history.
Absolutely. Noah, thank you so much. Saturday, Bruce will be on. We'll have other special guests joining. Come to the WITI Saturday, 10 a.m. Pacific. We'll have breakout rooms for an hour, and then we're going to learn more about this and just how we can leverage a lot of the new tools, right? Story making tools to help everybody make impact of what they believe in. So
Thank you so much, David. This is wonderful to be here, and I hope that we can continue to have this session and grow beyond all the other uses of telling your story through motion